So we have to start this podcast off in exploring the Orion because there's a little bit of bias here. I love this mech. I have played it extensively, and there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of pushover. Early on when I started playing Battletech, this was one of the models that I had, so I exclusively used it. I've won a lot of battles, some through skill, some through luck, but there is that emotional attachment to this miniature and this machine out there. So I'm going to try and separate that a little bit and tactically analyze it. So what we're looking to do in these podcasts is visualize the role, the tactical role, both on an individual basis and also as part of a lance, of what the mech does well and the areas where it's weak or the areas that an opposing mech warrior can exploit. Then it's up to you to kind of build the checklist and say, can we live with that exploitation? If it's vulnerable to something, is that okay because I'm going to have other assets? Or are there ways to negate that either through variants or perhaps having other mechs and other machines make up for it? An example of what I'm talking about. If I run a longbow, and I love the longbow, it's got a lot of threat for long range. It's got the 220 packs. It's got the 2.5 packs, LRMs. If I have access to really cheap indirect fire, Karnov and infantry, it allows direct and indirect fire. It's a mech, so it's got mobility. But where it's really, really weak, I mean really weak, is if you can close and get to danger close to get to point blank on that. If a Warhammer or other, a Grasshopper makes it close, something that has a nice array of medium lasers, SRM capabilities on there, the longbow is going to fold really, really fast. There's not a lot of armor on the arms. There's not, well, you hit me with a crit, I'm going to go boom, boom, and I don't even have fists to pummel you with. I'm going to have to try and slam you or kick you on there. So this is an example of an extreme case. What do I do to minimize that? Well, I take some sort of blocker mech or blocker unit on there. I put a demolisher tank next to that longbow. If it gets immobilized with motive hits, that's not that important because, well, I mean, yeah, it's important, but it's not that important because it has the turret and it has the two autocannon 20s, two AC 20s. So if you're going to try to get close, you're going to have to deal with that. And it has a lot of armor and capacity there. So that's an example. Just moving ahead to look and say to yourself, if there's deficiencies, what can we pair it with to make it work? So the Orion. The Orion for me is a long-range, short-range mech. It has a little bit of redundancy built into both on there. It doesn't have certainly an overload of weapons, but it works in a variety of situations. Because if you run it as part of a lance, and your decisions in doing this, if you run it as part of a lance where your focus is mainly short range weaponry with the idea being, okay, look, I'm going to eat some long-range shots going in, but I'm going to close the table or the hex map fast, and then I'm just going to light you up with lots of SRM packs and medium lasers and small lasers on there. The Orion can work with that because we have the SRM pack and we have the medium lasers, but it also has the LRM 15 and the autocannon 10 to put out some stuff to give you something to do at long range. Swat down some air stuff, maybe just put on a little bit of hurt, maybe try to get some motive hits. It gives you something to do. Likewise, if I switch that and you're mainly a long range type list, it has some play at the short range. Not overwhelming, as in being classed in one area, like the longbow. That's why I wanted to contrast that in the beginning. But you've got two types of weapon systems that are going to work at both long and short range, or medium range on there. Autocannon can kind of switch back and forth between the two, because certainly it operates also at a short range on there, as opposed to the LRM, where as you get shorter and shorter, you have modifiers to hit. Of course, nothing says you can't fire those off if someone's danger close on there, but it divides quite nicely. Now, for the long range, I like the autocannon because it's going to deliver the 10 points of guaranteed damage on there, and we've got the 15 pack. In my other podcasts, and these are up in the archives, but I don't know which way you're coming in, I like 20 and 15 packs. That's not to say 5 and 10s don't have their place for LRMs, but it's a different type of metric. It's a different type of optic tactically where we're going to utilize these things. 15 and 20 packs, if I roll average for the missile spread, that's some okay damage on there. If I roll legendary, yeah, that's great. So there's some redundancy in there if my dice are not as stellar, where on a 5-pack or a 10-pack, even if I roll really well, it's still a 5 or 10-pack on there. Slight exceptions that break that is where you mount 10 packs on mechs where they have speed or other assets that really allow you to leverage the long-range capacity of a 10-pack. Perfect example, and this is also up in my archived YouTube channel here under the Battletech playlist, the Valkyrie on it, where it's a light mech, and it's got a 10-pack, and it's got a medium laser, and it's got the ammo, not a full load, but all this with jump capability and okay speed and average armor for a light mech. I mean, I've crunched the numbers. I don't know how the heck you do this, but that's an example of normally I'm ho-hum on a 10-pack, but in very dedicated types of situations, yeah, it's kind of interesting. So we have that for the long range with the Orion, the AC-10, and the LRM-15. That's interesting. You know, that's good. That's got some bite. Now when we switch to the short range, it's got 2 medium lasers, which damage versus heat and versus range is the best weapon in Battletech. And this is coming from a guy whose philosophy is big guns never tire. I like PPCs, I like AC-20s, I like LRM 20 packs, I like the big dice high volume. But you can't always get that, and there's weight restrictions and ammo restrictions and range restrictions. There's a lot of what ifs. You're not going to get 20 points of damage for free. You're going to get it where the range is really close if we're looking at an AC-20. So there is a give and take. But if I look at all the categories of heat, damage, and range, medium lasers are the best. And, you know, they're good. So we're mounting 2 of those. That's good because now I've got redundancy on there. 1 is none, 2 is 1, 3 is some. You have 2 built in. I'd like 3 or 4, but look, we'd like everything. Might as well play a grasshopper. But the Orion has a lot of other weapons mixed in and things mixed in there. And then you've got the short-range missile pack. So, you know, with this, the short-range missile pack, the thing that, when I analyze that piece based on a mech, you are obviously at short range to utilize that, or shorter range, closing range, and there's the idea where the spread is going to try and hunt for some crits. Normally, if it's a mech that only has, if it's an all-energy mech, and your only short-range weaponry is an SRM pack on there, you know, kind of like an example would be the variant of the Warhammer that drops the machine guns. I don't really like that much because you've got ammo in there. You have the risk of an ammo explosion based on heat or armor failure and rolling that crit that's only utilized in short range. So there's a chance that if my opponent is able to catch me at a distance before I can close, that I have to possibly contend with armor failure and having an ammo explosion. Now, that happens anytime you have ammo, but if I have an AC-2 or an AC-10, yes, there's a risk of an ammo explosion, but I'm at least returning fire. I'm rolling dice right out from the beginning on there. So normally, if I see a mech that is energy, but it has a short-range missile pack, that's, you know, I consider that a slight liability on there. But the Orion, you don't have that liability as much, even though you have 2 other ammo systems in there, simply because you have something to do at long range. So in my opinion, it balances out with that, if that makes sense on there. Now, naturally, you're going to have to manage heat. Naturally, you're going to have to manage and be careful with how the mech operates because you've got some ammo in there. You know, we see this with a hybrid type mech where you're energy plus ammo. That's a debate for another time. But the Orion is solid. In my opinion, you've got the long range, you've got the short range, and I rank the Orion up there as you are building a multi-role lance or you're looking at things and you're not really sure what to take. You can't really go wrong with taking an Orion. and utilizing that on the table.